hardcore prankster.
There are many good stories out there. I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, tell me one, but think about it now and then before the end, see if you can summon one. But I hear all sorts of stories. And the years when he was at Williams with Nigel Mansell, there's some outrageous stories about how he used to wind up, because they were quite different personalities, weren't they?
No, he was brilliant. I mean, those were really fun years. You know?
And of course, those years are fascinating for my generation, because it was when I started watching the sport, and that's when we had crazy fuels, qualifying spec engines with 1,000 horsepower and crazy tyres that would last one lap. I mean, they were gladiators, weren't they? You used to bolt them in, and you didn't know what was going to happen.
I said to Nelson once, I said, how do you race with only 760 horsepower, and then qualify with 1,300? You know, how do you drive? How do you go out there and psych up? Because the qualies did one lap, the gearbox and the engine didn't often last one lap. The 5.5 bar boost, and packing dry ice in the intercooler and water spraying the intercooler and all sorts of things. And usually halfway round you'd hear bang, and that with a bit of black smoke behind the pits, and that didn't make it round, And he said, well, you don't drive it. He said, with that much horsepower, you come out of the corner, you get the car in the middle of the road, so you've got room for snaking, and then you just floor it, basically. You drive round the corner and then floor it down the straight. He said, you couldn't take a line up to the curb and then expect to use 1,300 horsepower.
You didn't know where it would end up, did you? And I come back to the fuel. I heard some great stories about some of the stuff you used to put in these things, and sort of corporate guests would be ushered away whilst you filled the things up because it was so noxious and toxic and horrible. Is that true or not? Some of the fuels were...
No, not really. Those are grossly exaggerated. Rumours put out by Renault, actually, who looked like they were going to get beaten, of course, and they did. We had to win the last 3 races, and we did. No, it was special fuel, but it was still well within the regs. There was no control over certain additives in those days, but there was very heavy control over the octane, the RON number. And we met the RON number. It just happened to have some rocket fuel in there. Yeah. But it was actually, the engine sort of needed it for cooling as well, the fuel.
Because it was 4 cylinders, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, and is there any truth in the fact the block it was related back to a sort of Group 3, Group 2 touring car block or something? Was there any?
No, it was a bog standard off-the-line 318 BMW block.
You're joking?
Yeah. And they used to leave them outside. If you leave them out in the rain for a year, they age toughen. So it was a standard road car block.
So how strong are those?
Well, strong enough until we got the Zolder once, and we did the... Paul Rocher used to call it his Hitler chip. So the program, Hitler Prom, that you put in the program in the car. So we had 2 sets of qualies. We do one on, say, 1,000 horsepower, advance the ignition a little bit, turn the boost up. And then if this car survived that, we take the wastegate off completely and put a plate over it.
Just weld it shut.
Pack the intercooler with ice. I had a water spray on the intercooler as well. And Rocher would bring out his Hitler Prom and stick it in the engine, and that was around about the 1,300 horsepower. And we did that at Zolder, and the final loop is just behind the pits, and as usual on the Hitler Prom, the car came round, and we could hear bang, and we saw this plume of smoke behind the pits, and then of course Nelson didn't come around. But what had happened is the brake mean effective pressure was so high on the piston that it pushed the crank out. It split the block in half all the way around and pushed the bottom of the car out onto the circuit. And the car was partially chassis, so the car broke in half basically. And Nelson gently skidded into the grass and the bank with the front bit, and the back bit sort of made a hole in the tarmac.
Did you ever feel a responsibility to the driver's safety putting them out in these weapons, or did it? Or was
Not at all.
It was just what they chose to do?
Not at all. Yeah. They loved it.
Yeah.
Anything that put them on pole. I mean, they liked it more. It would have been the other way around if we'd said, well, that's a bit dangerous putting that much power in the car.
Yeah.
We would have had complaints, certainly from Nelson. The gearboxes used to last one lap, and we had to throw them away because it bent the shafts.
It's incredible. Unrepeatable times.